This is a dangerous groups that we're dealing with now. It was a nightmare.
Flight 807, you're clear for landing. Runway 7, Bravo. All personnel report to the nearest tornado shelter. This is not a drill.
If you need help, then dial your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.
Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of The Mediator with me, your host, Brian West, here to give you the top 8 headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Now, as usual, I'll give you the top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made it first, followed by a movie clip, a skit, a trailer, or something that's going on in the community, or maybe some pictures. And then I'll give you the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week, folks. So let's waste no time. Woo-wee! Let's get to it. Story number 1. City errors continue to make headlines. An insurance lawsuit has been filed against Youngstown for failing to report a wrongful death lawsuit relating to an accident that occurred June 17th of 2017. The wrongful death lawsuit was filed June 14th of 2019, 2 years later. Now, according to a local Vindicator article. Now, the recent report says that the city errors caused city attorneys to miss several court filing deadlines. Now, this is not the only city error in circulation. There have also been building demolition errors in recent headlines also. Now, some spectators are concerned about the chill can story. If you want to add to that, that's in circulation. That's another story. Can the city tax breaks and financial incentives given to the chill can plant be considered as more tax errors for the city? That's why story number 1 made it this week. Big deal. Story number 2, $27.2 million incinerator project. Sludge is the focal point of this story, folks. In a month's span, the city produces about 1,100 tons of sludge and all that other stuff that comes along with that, according to a local article. Now, the question now is how to fund a $27.2 million incinerator project. The local article also points out the suggested use of ARP funds and environmental protection grants due to the fact that in 2016 emissions violations were cited by the EPA. So they're talking about using ARP funds or environmental protection grants to fund this. Now, this caused, because of the shutdown in 2016, it caused the city to shut down its incinerators. Now, an urban planner from MS Consultants, Inc. of Youngstown, Katie Phillips, says that the goal is to get the project funded through federal earmarks and state grant programs. Now, this is also known as pork spending, if you want to use political terms. That's why story number 2 made it this week. Story number 3, Youngstown Economic Development Director resigns. Wow. Youngstown Economic Development Director Sharon Woodberry is set to resign on May 27. Ms. Woodberry has worked in economic development for 24 years. That's a long time. Really long time. According to stories in circulation, the position will be filled immediately. Reports also claim that Woodberry accepted a job in Florida. Economic development in Youngstown has been in and out of the news, and current economic uncertainties remain in top headlines due to current conditions, or local economic conditions. The story is still developing. That's why story number 3 made it this week. Story number 4. Inflation is causing a lot of project delays. A trickle-down effect from inflation is being felt locally and putting some things on hold. Grass cutting has to be conserved, road repairs, and even basic spending habits are tied up in this story, folks. The timeline to our current economic conditions all began, if you want to go back, when the world was hit by COVID-19. Now, it almost seemed like a financial rebound from COVID was soon followed by what we see now, and that's inflation. There are several theories floating around that connect aid money to the current economic condition. conditions, this story is still developing. Let's just see. Let's hope, not just see how if prices will come down soon. So let's hope that they do come down soon. That's why story number 4 made it this week. Story number 5, Foxconn deal confirmed. The Foxconn deal, a deal to purchase the automobile assembly plant, has been reached between Foxconn and Lordstown Motor Corp. This is a $100 million commitment from Foxconn, which includes a $45 million loan to Lordstown Motors, according to a local Vindicator article. This is a big deal for Lordstown Motor Corp, creating a joint venture of 55% ownership of Foxconn and a 45% ownership by Lordstown Motors. This will allow the two companies to serve the global market. That's why story number 5 made it this week, because Lordstown Motors, the pressure is on, because they still have not, they have to get a product on the lines. That's why story number 5 made it this week. Story number 6. Cases are going up, and COVID news is not out of the headlines just yet. After 10 consecutive weeks of decline, COVID-19 cases are back on the upswing. On May 13th, cases were at their highest level in 3 months. Mahoning, Trumbull, and Columbiana County all reported a rise in cases. Deaths from all 3 counties sit at a total of 38,550 and rising. Even in a still strict vaccination state, there is no dodging the COVID-19 bug. This story is still developing. That's why story number 6 almost made it to the top 2 this week, because COVID is still hanging around. Story number 7 at the top 2. Local headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Turn off the lights. Light a candle. Ooh, yeah. The Mediators got a story for you. Yeah. It's time to enter the top 2 local stories of the week. Let's get freaky, baby, with the stories. Let's tell a story of love and sweat in the Mediator Hotel, baby. Woo! Yeah, story number 7. Local leaders regroup to battle crime. Ooh, if you don't have love, you got crime. Local leaders sense a long summer ahead, folks, because crime is still in the headlines. So they sense something happening, something brewing. And everyone knows that when the weather gets hot, folks, people magically get crazy. Let's get crazy. One local article focused on marches and neighborhood activists and volunteers for peace. This is what they're talking about battling crime with. The article goes on to point out action plans being implemented to keep young people away from violence. The most frightening part about this story is the simple fact that the more time that people spend trying to stop and prevent crime, the less time that they're able to spend on their own well-being. This is why crime is such a problem locally, and why the story will be one to keep an eye on, because if people keep trying to spend time to stop people on crime, they won't be spending time in the books and on themselves. That's why story number 7 almost made it to the top this week, but it's in the top 2. Big headline. Story number 8 to the top. Local headline, everybody that made it in this week. Got to believe in stories. Got to believe in love. Got to believe in mediation comes from above. Let's get a story for the world locally. Let it out sometimes, folks. You just gotta let it out. Story number 8. Big local challenges ahead, folks. Got to believe in something. The challenges locally headed into another important election season is growth. How do you fix all these problems? How do you grow the local market to make local communities more attractive for population increase? Local investments are at the heart of the story, because when people invest, they want a return. It was just yesterday that local investors built a demo house in a rundown community on the city's south side as an experiment. If my records are correct, it was on St. Louis. Back in the 80s, the house was vandalized and lost its value in less than 3 months. This experiment occurred, like I said, in the 1980s and still seems to be the same issue, the same case in 2022, thus proving that there are still some big local challenges ahead. That's why story number 8 made it this week, because it's basically saying that nothing has changed, folks. Well, folks, those are our top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. I'll be right back with the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories, so don't you go anywhere. You're in the Mediator with me, Brian West. I'm right back.
Tune in and don't forget to subscribe to Method 8 Inc. YouTube channel. You can also watch free public entertainment. And don't forget to show some support by visiting www.method8inc.com by buying something, clicking something, watching something, or just reading something. You can also sponsor a program as well. That's www.method8inc.com.
What does Method8Inc.com Media Center have that I need?
Small prints, event consulting, photography, business consulting, technical consulting, entertainment consulting, fundraising advice, event videography, movies, news, publishing, media, books, entertainment, acting, broadcasting, public relations, access to the visual and performing arts, ink and black ink refills, audio recording, graphic design, theater, minor computer and cell phone repair, and they're located at 5648 Market Street in Boardman, Ohio from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. every Monday through Friday. The list goes on and on.
Method8Inc.com. Buy stuff, watch stuff, or read stuff.
Oh yeah! And yes, we are chipmunks.
Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Folks, kids will be kids. I've seen a lot of kids and a lot of headlines. I've even seen my own family members, the children, getting into trouble. One of my little cousins, she'll be stepping across the stage to graduate, but it's been a long ride. You know, she got into some trouble, a while back, and it's just shocking how quickly kids can get into trouble. And everybody talks about how different ways to discipline a child, but my big cousin, I'm not going to mention her names for security reasons, because my family can get a little crazy, but I guess my big cousin put the wood to her. Back in the day, she went on a paddling spree, I guess, because my little cousin must have violated Code 222 of the American Mother Handbook, and I guess that house whooping straightened her out, because she been on the straight and narrow ever since. I ain't heard nothing about her. She's been quiet. And one thing I tell you about that ass whooping is that it's a little different from other ways of discipline. It will straighten a child. I still have flashbacks. So there's different ways to discipline a child, but there's something about the good old-fashioned whooping that will put a child in a straight, narrow box. It's old school discipline. Now, a lot of people don't believe in it. There's a lot of people against whooping. But I'm telling you right now, if America keeps headed down the road it is with these young folks, they're spoiled, rotten, lazy, some of them, not all of them, and they're causing a lot of problems. They will probably be reinitiating the old school, and let's just hope that we all get our stuff together, because I would hate to see every child get well, folks, that's my story for today. And I'm sticking to it. Let's get to it. Story number 1. Leo Terrell says law and order is missing in Democrat-run cities. Speaking of Republicans, independents, and analysts are eating away at a long list of Democratic failures, folks. The key talking point keeping this story alive are facts, stats, and evidence. The truth is that some Americans have actually lost faith in both parties, with some of them arguing the fact that there was only one party when the country was founded. So why is there two parties constantly battling it out now? Some people say they're not getting anything done, but I'm optimistic, so I just be grateful for what I got. Now, analysts have also fallen to the conspiracy debate, tying Democrats to special interest groups and what looks like a truth war, creating sparks of tribal battles with violent outcomes. That means people are choosing to be violent rather than use the system. They don't believe that the system solve these problems. Now, the key argument in this story is, have prosecutors gone soft? That's what Leo Terrell has said. He says that prosecutors have gone soft and Democrats won't acknowledge this. This story is still developing because if law and order is failing in Democrat-run cities, people are looking at the facts and they're looking at the stats. So we'll see how story number 1 develops. Big headline. Story number 2. U.S. aid money to Ukraine could hit $53 billion, but informed Americans say take care of home first. Zelensky says that that Russia is bankrupt and pushing back. That's what he says. The American people say, why send aid money to Ukraine when America needs aid money itself? Now, the importance of the story lies in strategy. Will the $53 billion buy the United States a peaceful future with a weak Russia? So overall, to war strategists, this is a power move, with Zelensky being a key player in this power moving. Now, to get a nuclear country to the negotiating table without conflict changes everyone's positions on the global chessboard. So that means a lot. There's a lot tied up in this, in all this craziness. Now, the biggest question keeping this story alive is it worth $53 billion? That's the question. This story is still developing. Story number 3. What to know about NATO and why the organization is in the news. Let's backtrack, folks. According to NATO.int, NATO, N-A-T-O, the North Atlantic Alliance, also known as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was founded in the aftermath of the Second World War. Now, its purpose then was to secure peace in Europe, now to promote cooperation among its members and to guard their freedom. Now, the explanation goes on to point out its opposition to the Soviet Union. The key word is opposition to the Soviet Union. This seems to be the main reason why Russian President Vladimir Putin opposes Ukraine's dealings with NATO. Turkey is now in the news because of Finland and Sweden's plan to join NATO also. There are benefits in joining NATO, and those who oppose NATO know that because the alliance is powerful, so powerful, the organization, this is what the organization provides, because with these benefits, there's power. The organization provides aid, military aid, and a seat at the table with some major global players. Who would want that as a country? This is yet another story educating people on what is actually going on in Ukraine and other major parts of the world. NATO has been in some major headlines, and for people wanting to know why, the list of answers goes all the way back to the Second World War's connecting to present day, if you want to be exact. Story number 4. More drug wars stories are in circulation, folks. More untold drug stories are returning to the headlines after another drug tunnel connecting the U.S. and Mexico was found. To flood a country with drugs is to kill it slowly, folks. That's my quote. The key to this story is understanding what drugs do to communities, cities, towns, and countries. Anybody who has been a victim, I have been a victim of this. I've seen it myself, what drugs can do to families, communities. It is devastating. Flooding a country with drugs is a war tactic, folks. This is just one of many stories proving how vast the drug war is. What people have to focus on in this story is how well invested drug lords are. I mean, they have a lot of money, a lot of capital, a lot of access cash off the books and some on the books. Some stories report that many drug tunnels are well constructed and well planned, with some even containing railroad tracks in these tunnels. That's some past stories. This story proves that not only do the people constructing these tunnels have eyes on the ground, but many could be hiding in plain sight. The story is still developing because you cannot catch what you cannot see, and when one head is focused on something else, another head could be moving something else in, and that's why story number 4 is so important, folks. Well, folks, those are our top 4 international headlines and developing news stories that made this week. I'll be right back with the top 4, so don't you go anywhere. You're the Mediator with me, Brian West. I'm right back. If you want to check out the stories that almost made it in or did make it in, go to our Twitter feed on our website. Check out everything. All of the sources are there. It goes to the website. It's method8inc.com. Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 8, or top 4 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Folks, people are having a hard time falling in love, you know. We're having a hard time loving. There's even some stories about a guy who put a tracking device on his girlfriend. That's pretty sad. I remember when I used to try to find love at little school parties when I was a young buck. I'd go in there and dance, and oh Lord, they got me on the floor. I get low, and I'd be dropping it like it's hot. Oh Lord, women all over the place, jiggling everywhere. And the brother pulled a gun out on me and said, "You better get away from my girl." I said, "Oh Lord." That was the last time I went to a party, folks. But I got to tell you about love, okay? Because everybody's looking for love. People use guns for love. They fall in love, and then a few months later, they're fighting. How do we solve all this? I've got a solution. And that's to stay busy. Find something to do. Or you end up like me, with a gun pulled out on you at a Christmas party. I'm in there jiggling and jangling. Rudolph the red nose. They wasn't listening to Rudolph. They was listening to drop it. They was dropping it. But the survival in a situation like that taught me a lot. And that's that you got to do something. You got to be in the middle. You got to mediate. You got to solve the problem. I was the peacemaker. But there's a lot of people who could have lost their life that night. But because of me, the mediator, this is how I've grown to become a superhero. I've learned to stop the violence through mediation. Yeah. Well, folks, that's my story. Woo-wee! Let's get to it. Story number 5. 1 million COVID-19 deaths. If you want to stop the party, bring in COVID. That's another way. Besides everything else going on, folks, COVID-19 has brought a lot of life-loving human beings to their knees. You got to put up a fight to stop COVID. One ABC story points out that even in the midst of all of the madness, few families have taken advantage of the government program set aside to help cover the cost of funerals for victims. Families have been missing out on a $9,000, I guess it's a grant, which is the average cost that a funeral of a funeral, according to the articles. I guess funerals are in the $9,000 range, but the government will pay for it if it's COVID related. This story is just another major headline proving that if 1 million Americans have died of COVID-19, then we could be losing the fight. We probably are. Now, the main reason that we're losing is because a lot of Americans in this story, we just don't practice good health habits. I try to stay in shape, but I guess that's the main reason why we're losing this fight. That's what the data shows. The data also shows that healthy people have beat COVID at a higher rate than unhealthy people. This story is still developing, and that's why it made it this week, because COVID is run wild. 1 million people, that's a lot of people. Big headline. Story number 6. High prices are a problem, folks. Here's why. Inflation has streaked to the top of everyone's problem list. Inflation is a problem for these main reasons. Here they go. Number 1, inflation kills the poor and middle class instantly by boxing them in. Sometimes it even kills them slowly. Some of them instantly. Inflation kills production. This is number 2. It kills production, construction, and growth because it eats away at everyone's ability to spend, especially construction crews, because all that material costs a lot of money. Number 3, inflation causes crime to spike and petty thefts to evolve into major crimes. That's number 3. Number 4, inflation is like a virus that eventually spreads to trading and the GDP, gross domestic product. That means that everything that we produce. Now, these are just a few problems on the list. If inflation keeps up, let's hope that the riot crew does not interrupt or come out, because when things get high and people can't afford them, that means they riot. They do desperate things to get fed. The only way to combat inflation is that there has to be enough production resources and commodities to deflate it. To deflate inflation, there has to be growth. Story number 7 in the top 2 international headlines and developing news story that made it this week. I hope you forgive me and give me mercy too, 'cause I've been all types of crazy trying to find a story for you. I'm ashamed of me, shame on me, 'cause I found a story that I knew would give you home. Bring you home, baby. Woo! Story number 7. Yes, America really does have a gun problem. Shame on you with your guns. Shame on you. for all this killing. Shame on you. Yes, America really does have a gun problem, folks. Story number 7. 11-year-old girl killed. 11-year-old killed by a stray bullet in New York City. It was probably, I believe it was a girl. If it was a boy, it was a girl, it doesn't matter. 11-year-old was been killed. Deadly shooting in a California church labeled a hate crime against the Taiwanese community. That's another one. Buffalo mass shootings sparking more hate and white supremacy stories. In May 2022, America hit the 33 mass shooting mark. That's a lot. That means that mass shootings are just becoming a daily thing. To give you an idea of how bad this is, around this time in the past 5 years, gun violence has held steady. Last year, mass shootings stood at its highest level at 37 mass shootings. The saddest part about the story is consistency, with little to no solutions, and it seems to be getting worse. That's why story number 7 made it to the top 2 this week. I am not going to give those who did the crimes any credit this week because there is good news out there. So shout out to all the graduates and the people doing good. Big headline. Story number 7 almost made to the top this week. Story number 8 of the top international headline and developing news story that made it this week. Rhythm of the stories. I tried out for Star Search, folks, a while back. That was back in the 80s. They had Star Search. I went up there. I sung my song and I got rejected. So now I'm here, giving you the top story that made it this week, folks. When you get rejected, it does something to you. It makes you want to feel important. So all I have is stories. This is all I have to give. Story number 8. America is in a war to save its economy, folks. If you didn't know, oil, gas companies, businesses, and everyday Americans are all in a war to save the American economy, folks. The inflation war is now getting everyone's attention if it didn't before. This is a major story, and people are losing sleep over seeing how far they can no longer stretch their American dollar. This is bad. Small businesses are pleading with Biden to take action on inflation, according to a Fox News report. Record high gas prices are eating into America's spending, according to J.P. Morgan. People are now considering growing their own food in their backyards. That's what the headline read. I'm even considering putting the dog out. If you ain't paying no bills, you got to go. Go to the dog pound. Get out of here. Now, you ain't doing nothing. All you're doing is eat, sleeping, and you know what? Get out, dog. A USA Today headline pointing out a surge in rental prices. That means rental properties. That's a surge. These are all headlines proving that America is in a war to save its economy. This story is still developing. That's why I made it to the top this week, because America as the economy, if you can't afford it, you can't do it. That means you got to, I hope we just don't start eating each other. That'd be bad. Well, folks, those are our top 8 local and international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. I hope you got something out of today's program. I hope you got something out of it. I always get something out of doing the research. As usual, like thank all the news outlets, the journalists, the people on the front lines of media. You deserve all the credit. I'm just the media, the man in the middle, reading the stories, navigated for you. If you want to show some support here at Method 8, it does not take much. All you have to do is visit the website on the screen, buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or to sponsor the program. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. I'll be back next week looking through over 200 or more stories just to keep you informed. Have a good week, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Mediator with me, Brian West. Peace.
If you need help, then dial your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.